Okay, welcome back, ladies and gents. In today's video, we're going to talk about this dire warning from the World Bank about energy prices this year. But just before we get into that today, I want to tell you, well, one of the reasons I'm unshaven today and I look pretty tired, I've been up quite late last night and I spent all day, which is why I'm not even in the studio today with all the, the shared screen and all that, just sorting out with YouTube issues from yesterday's video. Now, if you haven't seen it, I wouldn't be surprised because it was a shadow banned video yet again. It's always okay when the BBC or CNN or some of these, sort of news agencies put out crime statistics with a positive spin. But when I put out crime statistics that are actual statistics from the government and the, explosion in these crimes, without even going into detail on it, I'm just saying what the statistics are. If I do it, all of a sudden I'm in big trouble and my videos get shadow banned and they get age restricted and all these other things, and then I get emails and then my channel manager wants to have a call with me and let me know that this is not appropriate content and all this sort of absolute nonsense. So I've been sorting all of that out overnight and today, and it just really annoys me because now I get zero advertising revenue for all of that work. And it also has a knock-on effect to all my other videos. And I know many of you always say, Neil, get off YouTube and, stop going along with it where they keep taking all of your ad revenue. Not that I get a lot of ad revenue anyway, by the way. That's why I really appreciate everyone who does the buy me a coffee and, is in the Patreon and, you get all the services from me there. I really appreciate all of you because if I had to rely on YouTube, some months I would really struggle, believe me. Now, another really, really important, I guess we could say urgent point that I want to mention before we go on to the article was I keep seeing, and as so do you, all of these articles from the news about wheat production and how in the West it's okay because we've got plenty of wheat and we are the biggest growers in the world. I keep hearing USA and Canada, biggest growers of wheat in the world, etc. Well, I looked this up and that's actually not correct. The biggest grower of wheat in the world is China with 134 million tons per year. Number 2 is India with 107 million tons per year. Number 3 is Russia with 86 million tons per year. Now, a couple of other ones here I wanted to bring your attention to. Pakistan is 25 million tons per year and Turkey is 20 million. Now, Turkey's sort of a grey area where they sit, but I'm going to put them on the sort of western side for this example. So USA is number 4th on this list with 50 million tons produced per year. Canada, 35 million tons. Now, if you put those two together, USA and Canada, that is the equivalent of just Russia. Forgetting India and China, who produce 241 million tons between them. After that, in 6th place, we have France with 30 million. Ukraine is in 8th place with 25 million. Germany in 9th place with 22 million. And then Turkey in 10th place with 20 million. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Why is this even relevant? Well, we've already covered fertilizer is the most important thing when it comes to growing crops. Without fertilizer, we get very, very low yields on crops. And we also know, we have the evidence, the proof now, we have the farmers' warnings as well, that they have pretty much run out of fertilizer. Yes, they're still getting some, but a lot of farmers have either run out or they say they will run out this year in 2022. Now, we also know that Russia is looking to no longer export wheat to unfriendly countries, as well as a lot of other things. Well, what do we also have? The BRICS nations. Brazil, which isn't really a large exporter or grower of wheat anyway, but we have Russia, huge, 86 million tons. We have India with 107 million tons. We have China with 134 million tons. And then, of course, South Africa. So why am I mentioning this then? Well, just these 3 of the BRICS nations here create double all of these other Western nations combined in this example here. So all this media reporting that we're going to be fine, there's plenty of wheat and we're going to, ramp up production is just not true. They cannot ramp up production without the fertilizer. And you cannot import more, which is the other thing. We're going to import more of this wheat and all these other crops. You can't if they are not willing to export. So please don't get sort of trapped in this or overlook it and think that everything's fine, that there won't be food shortages or anything like that in a lot of these products, because, you know, I'm just doing the mathematics here. There will be issues. Okay, so let's go on to this article then, which was originally published by Fortune. And the headline is, the World Bank says global energy prices will soar over 50% this year, so the next 12 months, in the largest commodity shock since the 1970s. Of course, we know what happened in the 1970s. This is where a lot of the charts just spiked. In fact, we haven't seen, for those of you who haven't seen my monthly macro video, because it's in the Patreon community, I highly recommend you watch that video. I'll put the link below in the description and maybe the pinned comment. It is paid content, it isn't free content, but it is 1 hour and 15 minutes long. It is everything you need to know about investing, the macro landscape, stock markets, metals, we talk about bonds, cryptocurrency, and just the entire macro landscape. We talk about the 1970s and what assets will perform well in stagflationary environments, etc. It is a long, detailed video, as they always are, but it is worth your time and investment to watch that video. And for those people who often say, well, you should give everything away for free, everything. Ladies and gents, I have to earn some income. Look what's happened overnight. Again, I get massively penalized. I lose a bunch of advertising revenue, which isn't a lot anyway. I'm not doing my full-time work anymore. I've completely committed now to you here on YouTube. So I have to earn something, and that's how the Patreon helps to supplement now and replace a lot of the income that I gave up in order to do this work for you. Okay, so back to this article then. Global energy prices have risen dramatically as a result of the war in Ukraine and ongoing COVID-19 lockdowns in China, and the World Bank says consumers shouldn't expect relief anytime soon. Okay, so that's the opening paragraph there. Let me tell you why that is incorrect. And I'm not saying it's incorrect about the energy spikes, because that is correct. We are going to see these massive energy spikes. But what they are incorrect about is that these energy spikes have resulted from the conflict in Ukraine and the COVID-19 lockdowns in China. This is just simply not correct. Number one, China is not a large net exporter of energy. They are a huge importer of energy. What do you think they use to fire up all of their power plants and all the industry? China is the factory of the world. They are not a net exporter, they are a net importer of energy. So we can discount that straight away. The second point then is that these energy spikes had already taken place way before Russia entered Ukraine, and we have all this now conflict in the region. In fact, I was covering this last year in 2021, months, you're talking 6 months before Russia went into Ukraine. So parts of this you've just got to take with a pinch of salt here. The next thing they say is that food prices are projected to rise 22.9% this year, the most since 2008, as wheat prices jumped 40% to record highs. So the question that arises out of this then is that if the Ukraine only produces 25 million tons of wheat versus a backdrop of all these other nations in China and Russia and India, why are prices going up so dramatically? Well, that involves, amongst other things, sanctions and certain countries not exporting a lot of the wheat. I've covered as well many times that just because you might say have a 10% drop in production, it doesn't mean that you have a 10% increase in prices. Oftentimes you can have a 10% drop and it can result in 30, 40, 50% increase in pricing. The article goes on to say that even the IMF, my least favorite monetary fund, cut its global forecast from 4.4% in January, so this is GDP growth, to just 3.6% in April. And the World Bank slashed its global growth expectations by almost 1% to 3.2% as well. Again, I think they're being overly optimistic with these forecasts. I still think that we are going to go into a global recession followed by a global depression. But of course, a lot of these organizations can't put that out. They can't print that because it will cause a huge panic in societies. And this is, again, why you don't see media publishing statistics. Instead, what do they say? Oh, the negative 1.4% GDP was very positive. That's how they spin it. Look at this positive negative 1.4% growth. It makes no sense whatsoever. The article then goes on to talk about, on March 29th, President Biden authorized the release of 180 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve from April through October in an attempt to curb record high gas prices. And of course, they're talking about this like it's a positive thing. This is not a positive thing. Releasing the oil from the strategic reserves is a very short-term solution. Imagine you have a cut on your arm, quite a deep cut that requires stitches, and instead you just keep putting a band-aid, or what we say a plaster in England. You know, you keep putting this over it, and then, oh, that's gone back. Okay, take that off, put a new one on. That is all this is doing. You cannot solve these problems by simply releasing the reserves, because then, what's the point in having reserves? They're there for an emergency. And I personally don't think this is the emergency. If we have military conflict, and it could even be global, if we have military conflict, they're not going to have any reserves. Countries are not going to have any reserves. All the energy is going to be in the East. But of course, a lot of the politicians are focusing on, well, this is great because we can accelerate things faster to the green energy movement, and we can completely come off fossil fuels. Again, this is simply not correct. You can look at a lot of these studies by some of the greatest minds on the planet around the green energy movement. And they are very clear in what they say. You cannot be 100% in renewable energy. You have to have natural gas plants and, you know, other what they call fossil fuel plants. There's not fossils, but anyway, you have to have these things idling in the background. You can't just have completely renewable energy, because sometimes the sun isn't shining, like at night, other times the wind might not be blowing. So there has to be something idling in the background, even if it's just a small percentage of all the energy. But for all these organizations to keep saying, this is great, let's get rid of oil, we don't need oil, we don't need any of these fossil fuels, it is not correct. You will need them. In fact, a lot of military equipment runs on diesel, it runs on these fossil fuels. All right, well, thanks for watching. Really appreciate you as a subscriber, as a Patreon member. Appreciate you so much, more than you know. Thank you, take care, God bless, and I'll see you tomorrow.